Ohio State against Michigan State at Ohio Stadium on Saturday. A huge top 10 matchup. Big for the Big Ten championship game race. Big for the college football playoff race. Nathan Baird from cleveland.com along with Stephen Means. These are our game time decisions, kind of the pivotal coaching approaches that are going to decide this game. Stephen, what is your game time decision?
So, remember in 2019 when Wisconsin and Ohio State played each other and everybody made such a big deal of, ooh, which running back's going to be better, J.K. Dobbins or Jonathan Taylor? And J.K. Dobbins won the day, which was like the second time he'd won the day because he'd done it before in 2017. That's what I'm wondering today. I know the passing game is what everybody wants to talk about, but I'm more interested in that matchup where obviously they can't stop one another, but I want to see who has the better day. Bijan Robinson's hurt and done for the year. So these are the two best running backs in the country, and they're going to be on the same stadium on Saturday. Which one has a better day? And it's very simple and plain, but we've reached that point in Ohio State season where they're playing good enough players every week where you're allowed to just be like, okay, which elite player is more elite on this day? Because quite frankly, that might be the reason either Ohio State or Michigan State wins. So pretty simple. Who's better, Travion Henderson or Kenneth Walker III?
There were two meetings in 2019, and that second time, Jonathan Taylor was the one who kind of got out with some big gains early on. There was actually a long touchdown run earlier in that game that I remember that kind of got Wisconsin out to a start. So that's what I'm going to kind of focus on now is earlier this season, Ohio State had some rough performances in run defense against Minnesota and Oregon, and that's kind of what led to a lot of the changes that they made on defense, especially obviously that Oregon game that they ended up losing. But it wasn't really the accumulation of yards in those games that I thought really hurt them. It was giving up the big play. There was the fourth down play against Minnesota that got sprung for a long touchdown run. C.J. Verdell had a 77-yard touchdown run. He had 161 yards in that game. But, again, the accumulation of yards isn't what you remember. It's those big breakaway runs. There's another 24-yard touchdown run, I think it was, in that game. Ohio State can't let Kenneth Walker do that to them, and they can't let this receiving core for Michigan State, which has some talented guys in it, not as talented as Ohio State's, no matter what you might have read from certain newspapers earlier this season, but still some talented guys that I think can be effective, especially as teams have to overcompensate to try to stop Kenneth Walker. So I'm not that much worried about how many yards Ohio State limits Kenneth Walker from getting to some extent, because I think he's going to get his yards a little bit. It's a little bit like David Bell last week with Purdue. He ends up going over 100 yards, which is what he does the majority of the time, but they made him work for it. It took like 17 targets for him to get that kind of yardage. I think Ohio State needs to make Kenneth Walker work for his yards, and I think they make this receiving core work for its yards too. They can't give up anything big at the back end of this defense. That was a problem earlier this year, both in the run game and the pass game. We've still seen some lingering effects of it in the pass game. Even Nebraska was able to take advantage of it, which is not something that you think of Nebraska necessarily being able to do. Purdue didn't really strike that in the same way last week. It was more of an accumulation, but you saw that Ohio State's offense is enough to overcome that as long as they're not giving up the huge plays at the back end and having to try to answer for those. I think that's going to be a key today. Get the text 614-350-3315. We'll be telling you what's going on the field pregame. We'll be giving you analysis during the game from Buckeye Talk.